Attempts at faster travel started in the ancient world, from canoes and horses to improved roads and bigger, faster ships. Merchants made more money the quicker the travel time and the more goods they could carry. Evil kings conquered more. Horse-drawn trams and railways developed from industrial hauling routes. Rail tracks were considered safer, faster, and could haul more. Wooden rails to move ore from mines goes back at least to the 16th century in Germany and England. They were fairly common by the 18th century, usually hauling heavy ores or stone to the nearest water transport. Improved metallurgy led to cast iron rails, then steel. Steam-powered cars and wagons appeared in the 18th century, including a 1769 car created by French inventor Nicolas Cugnot. Cugnot also built a military tractor about the same time. Other vehicles were built that century, just not commercially successful. That would have to wait for the locomotive. Richard Trevithick was an engineer experimenting with high-pressure steam, which could move a piston in a steam engine. He made it work by 1800. It could be compact and worked even with a carriage attached, with exhaust released with a vertical pipe. The result was a steam locomotive in 1801, receiving a patent in 1802. Next came his Coalbrookdale locomotive, using a single horizontal engine. A flywheel drove the wheels on one side through spur gears. A Trevithick locomotive made a run in New South Wales in 1804, considered the first steam-powered railway journey. In a locomotive, steam is released into a cylinder at high pressure. The steam expands and pushes a piston that moves. The steam is released from the chamber and the piston moves back. Then it keeps repeating. Coal, wood, or oil heated the water in the boiler to produce the steam. There are leading wheels, driving wheels, and trailing wheels. The piston moves the driving wheels. The first iron rails were laid in Britain at the Derby Iron Works in Coalbrookdale in 1767. As locomotives got bigger and more trains on the road, the structure of the foundation and track got more complex. In ladder-type track, the iron rails were fastened on top of wooden track with iron spikes. The rails were manufactured in fixed links to be joined end to end. Both the track structure and rails continued to improve. Engineer George Stephenson built the locomotion for the Stockton and Darlington Railway in 1825, the first public steam railroad. Stephenson built the Rocket in 1829, becoming the major builder of locomotives. The Rocket averaged 12 miles an hour with a top speed of 30, a rocket for the period. Next came the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1830, 35 miles long. Most early railroads were relatively small affairs, largely because of the massive cost of infrastructure and engineering problems across mountains and rivers. The first large-scale enterprise linked London to northern industrial cities. The London and Birmingham Railroad was designed by Robert Stephenson, son of George Stephenson, and opened in 1838, about 112 miles long. Railroads were the high-tech rage of the period. They could move goods and people at a rapid pace. There was demand seemingly everywhere. Build more. What could go wrong? When interest rates were cheap, new lines were started seemingly everywhere. George Hudson inherited wealth and became the railroad king building one railroad after another. He eventually borrowed money at high interest rates, and his schemes included fraud, ultimately meaning he fled the country. In addition to Hudson, problems included the limited pool of engineers and laborers, massive cost overruns, and dubious construction methods. When the market tightened and interest rates rose, making borrowing difficult and more expensive. Collapse meant bankruptcies. Regulation followed, outlawing the worst practices. The good news was a substantial infrastructure was in place, and Britain had a practical railway system at mid-century with over 5,000 miles of track. The London Underground is a rapid transit system of Greater London. It was the first underground passenger railroad, opening in 1863, originally owned by private companies. They used broad gauge steam locomotives and were real railroads. The trains stopped often just long enough for people to get on and off. Technology expanded with size. Railroads were expensive infrastructure requiring considerable capital expenditures, improving technology, and civil engineering skills. People and goods could be hauled substantial distances quickly, eventually safely at low cost. An 1832 study of the Liverpool and Manchester Railroad showed that a journey by coach took over 4 hours. It was 20 hours by canal, but less than 2 hours by train, at about a third the cost of a coach. The economic benefits grew over time. The railroads were a substantial part of the productivity increases of the industrial age. The British Industrial Revolution involved much more than textiles, steam engines, and railroads. The Great Exhibition of 1851 is a starting point because its purpose was to show off British technologies. There were 15,000 exhibits, many from around the world. Next time on Food History and Mystery.